We're here at the studio of Mira Hnatyshyn, in a neighborhood off Broadway. Her upcoming exhibition, Euroscapes, opens at Blue Star Contemporary on March the 6th. Come with us as we take a look inside.
Hi, my name is Mira Hnatyshyn. This is my studio, and I would like to give you kind of a walking tour of my space right now. This is a painting that I constructed for an exhibition, and it's called The Braid Basket. It is based on a photograph that I took of people sitting in a plaza in Lviv, Kiev. So what I do is I take the photograph because I think that there's something very interesting and special about it, and often it's pretty simple to the viewer's eye. There's not anything elaborately going on, but I see something in it. I bring it to my studio, and then I start constructing a painting of the photograph, and I collage in fabric pieces, and as you can see, these are embroidered pieces, and I actually created these since childhood. Actually, I saved them up. Some of them I finished, some of them I didn't finish. So, and my mother's always been nagging me about finish your embroidery. Well, I'm going to tell her I finished them now because they're in this painting of people in Ukraine. So essentially, embroidery is very culturally significant in Ukraine. So that's why they became a part of this, the fabric of this painting. They became a part of their legs, their arms, their clothes, of course. And I included these threads, which are basically embroidery threads. So during the process of this painting, the people in Kiev, Ukraine, also started basically a quiet protest, and at this point it's a revolution. And I think that the world is watching it in as much of it as they can to see and hope that people can see democracy there in action.
Your braid basket piece really speaks to current events, what's happening in the Ukraine. Can you talk about maybe how those events have influenced the piece and your personal response or your family's response to those events?
Sure. I went to Ukraine like 2 years ago because I have family there and I have family in Poland, so I wanted to just visit because they've been asking me for a long time and I had never been there before, and I thought it's about time for me to go. So while I was there, I was in the city of Lviv, and I took a photograph of these people sitting in the plaza. And as I told you before, I came back to the studio and I started painting it. And as I was painting it, events started occurring in Kiev, the protests. And while I was there, it was interesting because I felt that there was an underlying kind of current still hanging around from the Orange Revolution, because in the plaza in Lviv, there were still quiet protests and petitions for some democratic kind of issues in Parliament that they wanted to push through. And I felt that sort of the people were hanging around in the plaza just sort of kind of quietly waiting for things to happen. So as I was painting it, I painted them sort of in an ice kind of situation, like they're about ready to just melt at some point and go walk off into some direction following their desires, because things were just not at their best. People don't live there the way that they live here, for instance. Mm-hmm. Roads aren't finished, apartment complexes aren't finished. I have a cousin who's paid for her apartment, like condo, like 10 years ago, paid for it in full, and it's still under development. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of these issues financially where people just want to live better. And my family here was very excited and also actually very nervous about the whole protest, because they don't want to see people die. Mm-hmm. This shouldn't be about violence and people dying. And since then, 100 people have died because the protest escalated. And so I think everybody wants the same thing, not just in Ukraine, but everywhere. They want peace and freedom and a better life. That's it. Yeah. That's what everybody demands, and that's what everybody should have. Mm-hmm. So let me take you into the next room, and I'll show you show you one of the other paintings, installations that's going to be coming up in Blue Star here soon. This is called Every Girl Wants to Be Queen. And as you see, everything's kind of pushed in right now, but because we need places to walk in here. And what's going to happen is all these flags are going to come out into the space, and they're going to circle around like little pinwheels. And then I have other little pieces that are going to be installed with it as well that add to the visual effect of the painting. But essentially what's happening here was when I went to London, I saw these young schoolgirls ascending a staircase at London Tower. And I just thought the juxtaposition of these young girls, against a very sort of violent place, because London Tower has a huge history of torturing people, imprisoning people. Lots of people died there, and here are these girls, schoolgirls, and they're laughing and having a beautiful time, and so innocently walking up, these stairs. So then I brought that photograph back here. I started working with the image on canvas. I created some things to sort of add it's sort of for the mind's eye. It could be a guard, it could be anything, but it gives you an idea that there's a figure in front of these girls.
Talk to us about your concept for the Euroscapes exhibition.
Sure. Euroscapes is a continuation of my work about basically social cultural development in other countries, and mainly I focus on women because women tend to carry the culture, and there's that's sort of my main interest right now. The Euroscapes entitles two pieces, two painting installations. One is called The Braid Basket, and the other is called Every Girl Wants to Be Queen. Those are, The Braid Basket is a painting based on a photograph that I took of women in Lviv, Ukraine, and Every Girl Wants to Be Queen is based on a painting that I took, a photograph of these young girls ascending the stairs at London Tower in the UK. I'm basically responding to the beauty of these women in my paintings and trying to build on the intuitive as my process goes along. I'll start the painting with the drawing of the photograph, and then I'll build on information that I know from the photograph that contribute to the concept, and then I'll do some historical research, and then I apply my fabrics and images or objects that I think add to basically the narrative or the poetry of the painting.
You've talked a little bit about your process, and you've described your works as kind of painting installations.
Yeah.
Can you kind of describe what that is? That define that a little bit more, and what can the viewer kind of expect to experience when they're coming into your painting installations?
Sure. I used to paint, and I still do, on stretch canvases, and sometimes I'll frame a painting, but at this point what I'm doing is I'm basically stretching the paintings on the walls and allowing for the psychology of that versus the idea that the idea of the window that you look through when you look at a painting. So what happens is, because I do that, the next step is to add physical objects to it, like fabrics and objects outside of the painting itself, and that extend out into the floor. So when the viewer comes in, they almost become a participant within the work. And that is basically what I call the installation part, because when I go and I place the piece in the exhibition space, I'm creating a three-dimensional space for the viewer to enter, and also feel like they've become a part of the history of the work as well. There's a history to the work from the issues that are conceptually placed on them from the time that they're photographed, and also the person who's coming, or the people who come to the work, bring with them their sense of time and their knowledge of what's going on today in history and in current affairs, and so they are able to emotionally and psychologically and physically interact with that piece. It isn't just about a square painting or a round painting or that's just flat on the wall and then they absorb it. It actually becomes
So it really kind of removes them from being an inactive viewer or voyeur.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes them, like you said, a participant, and realize that even if this is kind of locationally different, it's part of their history. It's part of their it's part of their existence.
It's part of the time and space that everybody's in right now.
So the installation really becomes about shared space in representing that in the gallery.
Right. This painting is a part of a series that I'm doing of some of the artists, specifically the women artists that I know. This artist happens to be a Galeazzo, a very amazing sculptor, and she and I met when we were both going to get our masters at UTSA, and I really enjoyed some of her work. In fact, I photographed her a couple of years later, and I used her energy in this painting, and then I also created kind of like this vest for her that sort of reflects something that she had created when she was in school with me. But she had done a dress with feathers, so I did a vest for her with feathers. This sort of reminded me of this Joan of Arc, because she was incredibly strong and talented sculptor. The pieces that you see that go into the installation are the painting, this vest, and then this smaller painting that you see down here, which sort of adds to the poetry of the work. At the end of a painting or during the painting, what I'll often do is scrape the colors off of my palette, because they embody the flesh tones and object tones and landscape tones, and I just really enjoy those colors, so I don't want to throw them away. I think they're part of the process, so I create smaller paintings, which I call the remains of the day, to contribute to or further extend the narrative or the poetry within the work.
Expand on the importance of the representation of women in your work and in your practice in general.
Sure. Well, Euroscapes was basically inspired by some of the things that are actually happening with women in different countries culturally. For instance, India was a big inspiration, because I was appalled at the things that were happening with the human rights with women and with men in general too. But so bringing women into the spotlight in my work celebrates them and honors them for everything that they are culturally to their environment, and how we're all in this place together, and we're not different because we're all speaking different languages or we're across the ocean. And that's very critical to me, because I think women are incredible human beings, and there's also a lot of women here in San Antonio who've inspired me, and I admired them and I love them, and I want to bring them into play as well into my work with the portrait series that I've created. So I'm basically doing this to celebrate the woman.
I think that also the materials and the process really reflects on that. Things, crafts that are associated with women or have that history, like the embroidery and the braiding, and even the fabrics, those kind of material choices that kind of express femininity, and also history. Our own histories, or those materials relating back to that in a really kind of subdued way.
Yeah, absolutely. So behind you is an older work that I did. This was a part of an exhibition that I called Lineage, a Tudor Story, where I was interested in the history of King Henry VIII and his courthouse painters, and then all of the history behind these paintings, because they are essentially documents in and of themselves, because they didn't have photography back then, so the paintings themselves acted as documents. Even though Jane Seymour had passed away already, she was in this painting. Elizabeth was in the near future, and the painting actually extended out larger, but I had only created the center panel, and you could see Prince Edward, who had also passed away. But it was critical for people to document, or for King Henry, for anybody to document what the family tree was like. And I've had actually some people tell me that I'm sort of a historian the way that I paint, because of most of my paintings are about social cultural development and that sort of thing, things happening today. All right, this painting behind you is a painting of, it's a little different now because I've that processed it in such a way that it's actually within stretcher frames. But I wanted to bring, it was very critical for me to bring this into the frame because of the background that I wanted to bring into it. The two girls that you see here are standing in front of a temple in Japan, and they were doing the piece out for their mom, I think, so she could take a photograph them and put them, you know, so they could put themselves on Facebook doing this or something, or some social media. And I thought that, you know, Japan was interesting because it's basically the land of cuteness when it comes to the youth, because they enjoy anime and they dress up like some of the anime characters, so it's really kind of incredible. And these young girls were sort of standing very kind of seriously, and there was something about it because they were in front of the temple, and I'd gone through the temples too, and I think that it's a very kind of spiritual place. It's absolutely a spiritual place, so there's a transformation that happens, and I'm not sure if I painted this exactly for any kind of transformation that they were going through, but I certainly went through my own, just being there. So I painted this white rabbit here as a symbology for the idea of transformation, and the idea of, you know, going down that, following the rabbit down the hole into that transformation. And also the white rabbit does exist in the mythology in Japan. There are several stories that are related to the white rabbit. Okay, this is a series I created back in 2006, and it was also based on some of the articles that I've been reading in the New York Times or the Express News, sometimes just online. This was right after Hurricane Katrina, and it's called Katrina Rescue. And essentially it's because I'd seen this photograph of this firefighter who had saved this young girl, and they were floating, you know, on a boat out, you know, trying to get out of the flooded area of Katrina. And this painting was called Dream Mask, and it was on the day of John Lennon's death, when he had been shot. They were celebrating the man versus the death. And for me, this is more personal because of growing up with John Lennon's and the Beatles music. I really wanted to portray something that was very mystical and peaceful and peace-centered around the man. Okay, if you walk this way, you'll see what I actually used the entire house as my studio, so no floor isn't touched or wall. And what you see here is a work in progress. It's a part of a series that I've been working on called the Time series. And essentially what I do is I start with the day's news or something about the articles that are in there that make an implication or a concept for the piece itself, and it becomes actually the foundation for the whole painting. I used to take these newspaper articles and collage them into the painting, but now they are the foundation, and what I do is I build the paintings on top of them, and I add all sorts of architectural or home type of symbology to them. Like for instance, this one over here has wood and glass, and you see, and paint. Okay, so this one is also part of the Time series, and you can see that I've used, they almost become sculptural, because I like to combine those architectural features like glass and wood on top of something that's layered information. So again, I'm just going to reiterate that the most of my work is based on today's history, social cultural issues that are out there, gender issues, that sort of thing. And the other thing that I really want to achieve with my paintings, installations, is a sense of timelessness, so that you can take this painting and see it 30 or 40, you know, maybe if I'm lucky 100 years from now, and say that it's relative to all ages, to any time period, because people are always eternally struggling, you know, with things, and always trying to make something better, you know, as far as our humanity goes, I suppose.